Today we talk about, is sex supposed to be painful? I'm Dr. Mark Amols, and this is Taco Bout Fertility Tuesday. Probably every woman, when having intercourse, has once had pain. Matter of fact, it can be normal. But the question is sex supposed to be painful? And that's where we'll make the distinction between once in a while having discomfort and always being painful. So the big question comes down to is, when is it pathologic and when is it not pathologic? In general, if it's happening throughout the entire intercourse, then it's probably pathologic, meaning there's an actual cause. If it happens once in a while during intercourse, then it's likely something that's not going to repeat and not pathologic. Probably one of the most common causes of pain during intercourse is going to be from the penis hitting the ovary. During intercourse, the ovaries are free to move around, and sometimes what can happen is the penis can hit the ovary and that hurts. Matter of fact, anyone who's ever been through IVF knows once the ovaries become enlarged, they start to hurt more, and things like jumping around or even intercourse can be painful. Well, the same thing can happen naturally, but also you can have a cyst. So if your ovary develops a large cyst, now there's a bigger area to hit with intercourse, and sometimes it can be more painful through that time of intercourse than in times before. Now, this type of pain is obviously going to be a pelvic pain. It's not going to be on the outside, but more deeper inside. And so if you're having intercourse and all of a sudden there's a jolt of pain, that probably is the penis hitting an ovary. If it's throughout intercourse, but still feels like the same pain, there may be a cyst. But if it keeps happening with multiple times with intercourse on different days, then you have to start to think something isn't right, and maybe you have a persistent cyst that's causing it, or maybe there's something else. So what is that something else? Well, probably the biggest thing that comes to mind is endometriosis. Endometriosis is when the inside of the uterus, the lining that you usually pass with your period, grows on the outside of the uterus, and that could be around the ovaries, and that can create pelvic pain. That pelvic pain can sometimes be during the cycle, it can be throughout your monthly cycle, but it also can sometimes cause pain with intercourse. And that pain is usually throughout the whole intercourse, meaning it's always uncomfortable having intercourse. What's interesting is that if you have infertility, you already have a high chance of having endometriosis just by having infertility. The other thing associated with endometriosis is when you have a tipped uterus. And so if you have a tipped uterus and infertility, then there's even a higher chance you have endometriosis. But just having pelvic pain during intercourse doesn't mean you have endometriosis. It just may be a signal that you may have it. Other causes of pain can also be externally. So some women have problems where the vulva develops in a way where it becomes very painful for intercourse. And that's because the tissue develops a little bit different, and that can lead to a thing called Vestibulitis. There are several treatments for this, such as using unscented soaps and cleaning the area consistently, but there's also a surgical remedy called vestibulectomy. And usually once a woman has a vestibulectomy, usually their pain is gone. But again, that pain is going to be at the entrance of the vagina. Now, there are other types of pain with intercourse called vaginismus, where the actual vaginal muscles are actively pushing the penis out. And it actually becomes very difficult to have intercourse. And that can sometimes be there from the very beginning, before you even start trying to have intercourse. But sometimes when people have things like endometriosis, or vestibulitis, or just pain with intercourse, they can actually develop problems that can lead to vaginismus. For example, there's a condition called pelvic floor myalgia. And what that is that eventually your body is so used to pain that it starts to almost tense up. That intensity in the building up of the muscles can actually prevent you from having intercourse or make it severely painful. And these women have to undergo physical therapy to kind of reconnect their brain and their muscles to not tighten up so much during the act of intercourse. Another area that can cause pain with intercourse is interstitial cystitis. This is where the inside of the bladder is inflamed, and that can cause pain because the bladder sits on top of the vagina, and so with intercourse, it can cause pain there. Overall, you can see there are many causes of pain during intercourse, and that's because certain anatomical structures surround the vagina. In the front of it is the bladder, behind it is the rectum, and then there's the possibility of the pelvis inside there where the ovaries and again things like endometriosis can be there, such as even infections can be there. And so intercourse can be painful for many reasons. But the most important part is it all the time when you have intercourse, or is it just once in a while? If it's just once in a while, you don't have to be so worried. It probably is just hitting the ovary. However, if it seems to be more than once in a while and happening regularly, then you might want to see your doctor to have a pelvic ultrasound or to determine if there might be something else wrong. And especially if it's to the point where you can't have intercourse, there is definitely something wrong. And you need to see your doctor to get that figured out, because no one should have to live with a life like that. And if you ignore it, potentially you can develop those strained muscles with a pelvic floor myalgia, and that can lead to even longer problems in life, making it more difficult to have intercourse and potentially straining your relationship. Although this doesn't affect everyone, it's still good knowledge to know, and hopefully you found this episode at least knowledgeable, and maybe it may help one or two of you. I think the most important thing to understand is that you want to treat it sooner than later, because the longer you wait, the more of a problem it can become, because your body will start to adjust to it, and that can cause those muscles to tighten up, and that can cause problems. As always, I always appreciate everyone listening to the podcast. As you know now, I do have a TikTok account where I do smaller discussions about these topics at Amols MD. And as always, too, if you like this podcast and you want to support us, tell your friends about us and give us a 5-star review on whatever medium you listen to us. Until next week, this is Taco Bout Fertility Tuesday.